Okay. So again, if you're just joining us, welcome to Strategies for Enhancing Instructor Presence in Your Online Course. And I thought we could just go over some goals and then some introductions, and then we're going to dive straight into the content for the workshop. So these are my goals that I have for you today for this workshop. When we're talking about developing an instructor presence, there are some different components involved. So I want to talk about how you can communicate effectively with your students in this online space, how to demonstrate or show to your students that you actually are there and you're present, you're a real person, and then how you can support your students' overall course success. All right, so I thought we could start with using the text chat and go ahead and introduce yourself. Your name will auto-populate, but you can select an emoji just to represent your mood. What do you teach? Or if you don't teach, what is your role at NIU? And then, in your opinion, what makes a strong, positive teacher impression? So I'm going to let you type for a little bit. And I saw some of you already found the text chat. Yes, happy August. I can't believe it's already here. Excellent. I see we had a couple more people join us. Welcome, everyone. All right, I see some answers coming in. Great. Let's go through these a little bit. Welcome, Rodrigo. You teach PSPA. I think that's public administration, if I've got that correct. Consistent and positive communication. Great. A key aspect to an effective online course. I agree. All right, Andrea Guzman is an associate professor in communication, specializing in technology, particularly AI and robots. Oh, that's exciting. Keeping your students' needs in mind while creating and delivering course content. Absolutely. Anna Mary Walker. Oh, I love your emoji. That's fantastic. Nonprofit and NGO studies. Yes, I'm familiar with this department. And you're going to be teaching an online asynchronous course for the first time this fall. Well, don't panic. I promise. We'll give you some good strategies. All right, we've got Brandon, his MS Ed Behavior Analysis Program. Great. Respectful and supportive relationship with students. Couldn't agree more. International business from Russ. And education is a conversation. Oh, I like that. We have Valerie from, let's see, CNI, curriculum and instruction, I believe. Present and forming a sense of community. Yes. Oh my gosh, I love all these answers. Yes. So I think we all know what makes a good impression. So now we just have to figure out how do we do that in the online space. Great. Well, it's wonderful to meet all of you. So let's dive into the content. I know that's what you're eager to learn about. All right, so I did promise that I was going to try to come up with an interactive workshop for you. I hate to throw you into breakout groups. That usually makes people panic and they run away. So text chat usually is the preferred method of communication. But again, if you'd just rather hop on the microphone, please feel free to do so. Um, for those of you who have taught online, in your online course, how do you approach communicating with your students, showing your students that you're present, and supporting your students' success? I would tell you maybe just to pick one if there's one that calls to you, because I think you already have some pretty good strategies in mind. And so it's a great place for you to share some of your expertise. Brandon has weekly announcements introducing the content for the week and upcoming assignments. Absolutely. And I think somebody had mentioned, maybe it was you, Brandon, the idea of consistency. When you send those announcements, when can students expect to hear from you? You know, this sounds like maybe at the beginning of the week. For some of you, you may end up sending something at the end of the week as well, just to remind them about those impending due dates. But getting into routine with your students is very helpful. Us as being responsive to student communications in a timely fashion. Yes, I agree. I try to communicate and respond to students relatively quickly. I do think that there is a danger sometimes with all these smart devices that we feel like we're always on. You know, your email goes off while you're getting ready for dinner. Do you have to respond in that moment? Probably not. So sometimes even just posting some some information in your course and your syllabus about your anticipated response time. Maybe you have a 12 or 24-hour response time. Oh, I like this. Andrea has a Q&A page so they can find information easily, and that's a great way to share it with the rest of the class. It's not just for one person. Valerie has an identity poem. Students control the narrative, and then they get to share who they are and how that's being defined. And you also share your poem. That's great. Yes, lead by example. Wonderful. There might be some more still coming in. I do just want to be cognizant of your time, so I think we can go ahead and move on for a little bit here. So we know we want to have a good, positive, strong instructor presence in our online course, but what does that actually mean? So I thought we should come up with a working definition that we can all agree upon for this workshop. We can also talk about what it isn't. One of the hallmarks of effective online instruction is this idea of planning. A lot of preparation goes into effective online instruction. And so sometimes we get into this set it and forget it mentality. It's kind of one of those dangerous pitfalls. But we go ahead and we set up our class, we get it all ready to go. And then because we've done so much front loading for our course, sometimes we forget to check in with our students. And that is one of the ways that we diminish our instructor presence. So instructor presence isn't just about setting up or designing the course, it's about facilitating it. And that's when you get to actually interact with your students once they enter that space. So that's what we're going to want to avoid. And here's what it actually encompasses. So there are three different aspects to instructor presence. There's your own unique persona. A lot of online students have actually admitted that they're taking an online course and they don't know who their instructor is. They might be taking more than one online course and they mix them all up. They can even be courses that are from different fields and different disciplines. But if there's not a strong instructor persona, then students are likely to confuse their classes. So somehow we have to bring our own unique personalities into the space. There's also the idea of instructor presence, which several of you commented on. And this is the idea that you're helping students to make connections with their peers as well. We can have some rich communities in an online space. We are not tied to a physical setting, so we can really have a strong scope for this social connection. And so one of our roles as an instructor in an online course is to facilitate that social aspect. And of course, there is our instructional presence. No two instructors are the same. No two instructors will run their course the same. And so this is where you help define for your students your expectations for your unique course. What type of content are you selecting? What made you select that content? Do you have multimedia? Do you have a rich, diverse, pool of authors? What are your assessment and activity expectations? So this all kind of goes into your instructional persona. So, this next question that I have for you is because I think many of us follow this trajectory where we either start teaching in a face-to-face context, or maybe that's just what we have the most experience with as students ourselves in the past. Somewhere along the line, we might start to incorporate more and more technology. I know many courses are kind of hybrid now, but I would like you to think about how would you communicate, show your presence, and support your students in that face-to-face course. And then why is that different than an online setting? And this is again one of those questions you can type in the chat. All right, I'm going to wait a moment for those to come in, but I think I want to come back to this, but I think some of you are still typing. So, oops. All right. When we talk about how to create and sustain different connections in online course, I want to give you some very specific tips that I think can help you. So the first part is this idea of an introduction discussion forum. Now, I think this is becoming standard practice. A lot of people will put this either in a welcome module or maybe in their first week of content for the course. But one of the things that we've learned about online courses is that people still very much respond to voice and visuals. And so instead of just having a text-based discussion forum, I encourage you to ask your students to share videos. And this is something that you can do in return. Ask them to record a welcome video. You can give them specific content. Do you want them to talk about, why they enrolled in this course or what their goals are for the future? Or maybe you just want them to keep it kind of casual. So When students go ahead and start sharing these videos, they're also going to be looking for yours as well. I had one instructor who was in a rush, and so she ran out the door and she turned on her camera while she was walking her dog. And so the entire course welcome video, we all got to watch this kind of little potato of a dog as it walked down the sidewalk. And she said it was a very unplanned, she was just in a time crunch, but as it turned out, it was this amazing icebreaker, and her students really warmed up to her right away. And so from then on out, she always made it a point to kind of record an unconventional welcome video. So think about doing that. I know it pushes us past our maybe our comfort zone of just typing a welcome text-based response. And of course, require people to interact with their peers. In an online course, students can be spread out geographically, and so they might never have met any of these other students. So it's a great way for them to broaden their social horizons as well. I do like to ask, even for an asynchronous course, students to try to attend a synchronous session. If they can't make it, that's okay. You can record it. But again, it's just this nice opportunity for somebody to see your face, to hear your voice, and to get to know you. Have an icebreaker activity for those who attend so that they get to interact. The idea with an online course is you don't want to spend the entire time lecturing. So make them interact as well. And of course, some other things that we can do include a welcome assignment or a survey. So I do have some tips and some resources for you for a welcome survey. This is a great way to learn about your students right away, right off the bat. Sometimes we wait until the end of the course to collect our course evaluations and feedback from the students. So ask them early on about some of their needs and their interests, things that really motivate them, as well as things that, kind of make them get less excited about a course and kind of turns them away. And I do have some samples for you. Okay. I see some stuff coming in the text chat, so I promise I haven't forgotten. I will come back to that. As far as creating and sustaining engagement, this is an opportunity for us where we can connect students to the course content. So, and you can also get them to interact with each other and with you. So there's a lot of different types of engagement, right? There's how students connect to their coursework, their peers, and then their instructor. Part of this is us reaching out to try to share something personal about yourself. What drew you to the field? Do you have an interesting story to tell? Something that you did this summer that directly relates to maybe your work. Are you published in the field? Let them know who you are and what's going on. And similarly, express that same interest in their lives. I think you're going to find you have a lot of adult learners with a lot of rich experience that they can incorporate into your class. I hate to read just directly off the slides. I know you're looking at this. So when we talk about show relevance to course materials, to students' academic lives, think about skill transfers. I had mentioned I started teaching English composition, and right away I realized that if that course had not been required for all students, the majority of my students wouldn't have been in my class. And for me, that was actually a challenge. How can I make them interested in this course? How can I find a way for them to gain value from this class that they otherwise would not select? Now, you can think about how does this course relate maybe to other courses if they're in a program? How does this work that they're doing today connect to the next course coming up? Or you can try to connect it to other courses at NIU, even if they're in a different program. So, for example, I realized with a lot of students, they didn't know necessarily how they were going to perform on an essay. They would turn them in, but they had no idea what their grade would be. And I thought that was kind of strange. Even with a grading rubric provided ahead of time, they didn't know what score to expect. So we started working on this. We started looking at how to deconstruct a grading rubric. And then I also provided some sample essays from a different course, from a different instructor from, I don't know, a previous semester or two. And I gave it to the students, and their assignment was they had to grade the essay according to the rubric, and they had to determine what grade that essay received. So this started a lot of conversations, and in turn, a lot of students realized how to use a grading rubric almost as a checklist for all of their writing projects. I did have a student come up to me and say, oh, I actually aced my science exam because I knew how to answer the essay question. So if we can help them make those connections, they're likely to participate and really get involved with your course. The third one that we see here on the screen, this can be a little bit controversial, connect course policies to professional expectations. I think this again depends on the course that you're teaching. If it's an introductory course, you know, a 100 or 200 level, it might not be applicable. But if you are teaching, say, graduate students or somebody who's in a specific program like nursing, then it would make sense to connect those course principles to the professional expectations. So I would say use your best judgment on that. Any questions so far? Okay, I want to get back in here to the chat because I saw some great things coming in. All right, someone said, I make it a point to learn every single student's name through a series of attendance questions. I also read their body language to gauge who is showing up tired, overwhelmed, eager to participate, and tailor my engagement accordingly. Yes, so that is one of the things that's really hard to gauge now. Even if you're in a synchronous course, a lot of us don't turn on our cameras. So how do you can't really read body language. So that kind of does leave the equation when you get into this online course space. And it's even more difficult, yes, in an asynchronous online course. Yep, you lose that nonverbal piece. Yep, I see a lot of people agreeing. I'm not disagreeing with you, yes. Delayed feedback. Okay, yes, yes. All right, I think Russ said you use Yellow Dig. For those of you who are not sure, Yellow Dig is it's an interactive discussion board. So it has some gamification principles. You can set it up ahead of time where students will earn points for making posts, and you get to make up the rules. So like maybe their first post is worth the most amount of points, or if they post early in the week, they can get an extra points. And then they can get additional points for responding to their peers. So it allows students to decide how and when they want to post in a discussion board, as long as they meet their point values, their target goal. All right, so interactive games such as content like Jeopardy. Yes, excellent. Some of those we can still adapt for an online space, so that's wonderful. Okay. So as promised, we're going to get into the specific tips. One of my ideas here is to communicate frequently and in multiple ways. So this was a course announcement. When I send announcements, I also like to make sure to click the button at the bottom of the announcement that it goes to their email. There's a better chance that students will read it. As you can see, this demonstration one up here up on the screen is talking about Yellow Dig. So I'm glad somebody brought that up already. When you send your communications, think about how often you send them to students. You want them to be frequent enough to catch their attention and give them enough time, you know, to make sure to get their work done. But you also don't want to inundate them with messages. If you're sending, 4 or 5 messages a week and your students are enrolled in other courses, they're likely going to become immune to some of the content that you're sending out. So I usually shoot for maybe around 2. If something odd happened, if there was a technology glitch, maybe 3. But that's kind of my rule of thumb. I know they have a lot going on, so I want my announcements to have an impact. What are some other ways that we can do this? Well, we have messages and emails. Now, messages are things that are found inside of Blackboard. There are mixed reviews on how instructors feel about messages because you don't get an alert that somebody sent you a message through the messaging tool in Blackboard. So many of you may want to adopt the policy that students should contact you via email. Now, you can still use the message tool in Blackboard effectively for your needs. And so that's what this picture is up here on the screen, right? You can send an email copy to recipients, and you have the option to allow replies to this message. You see that bottom green checkbox. I usually keep that unchecked. That is my own personal preference because, again, I don't get any alerts telling me to check the messages in my Blackboard course. So it's a great way for me to still send a message directly from my course. Maybe, I'm going through the grade book and I notice somebody hasn't turned something in. I can just use that tool right there. And then if the student has any questions, they can email me their concerns. Okay, so this is one of the resources that I will be sending out to you after the workshop, but this is our website on regular and substantive interaction. It is considered a best practice, but it is also a federal requirement. So regular and substantive interaction has kind of 3 different components here. The first one is that it must be initiated by the instructor. So any type of interaction has to originate from you, the teacher. It has to be regular and scheduled, so it can't just kind of be intermittent. And it also has to be focused on the course content. So some of these icebreaker activities that I have with my students, they're wonderful tools just to get students talking, to get them, interacting with one another. If it's not geared towards the course content, then I wouldn't say that it falls under the category of regular and substantive interaction. It is a valuable thing to incorporate into your course, but just make sure that you always come back to the class content. The other idea here is timely feedback. So we have some different options here for grading. One of the things that I like to do with my students is I ask them to turn in attachments. Why? Well, if students just type in that little text bar in Blackboard, then I can't use all of these full grading tools that you see on the screen. If you see that black ribbon in the middle there, these are some things that allow you to customize how you respond to your students. For instance, if I keep using the same feedback over and over again, maybe I'm talking to my students about grammar or a thesis statement, I can save my comments into kind of a library or a repository of comments. And then I can keep sending it to students over and over without having to type it each individual time I grade a paper. It's a great time saver for me, and students are appreciative that they get their grades quickly and efficiently. So have any of you actually used this tool by any chance? So yeah, if you're looking on the screen, that black ribbon in the middle, if you see the very last icon on the right, that's like the library of books. That's where you can save all of your feedback comments for students so you can repurpose it over and over again. Great, Andrea. That's another way to do it. Yep, you copy and paste out of a Word document. Yes, I'm all about being efficient and saving time with grading. It's a win-win for everybody. Wonderful. I also like to use multimedia, right? So this is where we do module overviews and videos. I think it's easy and it's so tempting to tell people what we're going to be doing for the week by writing a short paragraph. But again, students really respond to videos and it allows them choice in how they want to interact with your content, with your instructions. So, for instance, I've had students tell me, "Oh, I love when there are videos in the course." And I asked, "Oh, why is that?" And they're like, "Because of the closed captions." I thought that was kind of interesting. They hadn't asked for an accommodation, but because they had closed captions, they were able to turn the sound off and they could watch the video while their child was sleeping next to them. So, again, this is a great way just to connect with your students. Oh, I see a hand raised. Anna Mary?
Yeah, sorry. I couldn't find the hand raise earlier, so I put it in the chat. But before we get too far away from it, you mentioned that we could send a message using the message system in Blackboard.
Mhm.
And I noticed in your little example that you were sending it to the entire course. And I was just curious, is there like what would be the benefit of sending it to the entire course through a message as opposed to an announcement? Because I usually send them to as announcements and then message students individually, but and maybe it was just your example and it's not necessarily your practice, but I'm just kind of curious, why would that potentially be advantageous?
You know what? Honestly, I'm the same way. I use messages for usually individual students or maybe groups of students if they're working on a project or something of that nature. I think Blackboard was really just trying to give you options on how you can reach out to students from different access points in your course.
Okay.
It's personal preference.
Just making sure I'm not missing a hidden gem like the repository. That's
Yeah,
awesome. I didn't know that existed. I use that. I grade through there all the time. So thanks.
wonderful. Yep. And if you have any questions and you're like, hey, I found the tool, I still don't know how it works, please feel free to reach out to me after the workshop. We can set up a virtual meeting and we can screen share and we can walk through the steps together. So, always happy to help with anything like that. I don't want to leave anybody hanging. Establishing a communication plan. This is really for your own peace of mind. And I would publish this in more than one spot in your course. I would put it in your syllabus, maybe put it in a welcome module. If you feel that students aren't getting the message, put it somewhere in your announcement. But just let students know your response time. When do you respond to emails? Do you respond on the weekends? Yes, no. It's not really that there's a right or a wrong answer to this. It's just about being consistent so that students know when you're available. I usually had the response that I would not be answering questions about an essay the day before it was due, so just let them know. How can they reach you? Phone, email, do you have virtual office hours? Let them know what that looks like for you. Again, you're going to find what works for you in your unique schedule. I also really like to use Outlook away messages. So if somebody sends me an email, the night before an essay is due, they'll get an automated reply that reminding students that I will not be available that day to answer questions, but I will be happy to reach out to them, the following day on Monday or something of that nature. It feels like sometimes we're always on, and I think that is the downfall of technology. So set up, your boundaries and just let students know that, hey, this is when I'm available. I'm not ignoring you, but you're not available 24 hours a day. So this was, again, something that I swiped from one of my colleagues. And they put their communication expectations. I check my email regularly. I will respond within 48 hours, except weekends. And then they also put what they expect from students. They even had format emails appropriately, which I did think was kind of funny until I started receiving some very strange kind of like text message type messages from my students, which I didn't think were necessarily school appropriate. So these are all things that you can adopt for your course. Grading options. Um, I am all about streamlining the grading process. If there are tips, tricks, and tools, I want to hear them. Let me know your best secrets. I'll give you some of mine. Um, when it comes to grading, I think most of us rely again on text-based feedback. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just time consuming. And then it takes longer for the students to see their grades, and that can cause anxiety. And then you get a pile up of emails asking, when is my essay going to be graded? Or when do I get my exam back? So when you are in the Blackboard gradebook, you may not have even realized it, but you will see a little camera icon. That's what the red arrow is pointing to. So this is another way for you to post feedback to your students. You can just record your feedback without the camera on, so it would just be your voice, and you would talk through, their assignment submission. Or you can also turn on your webcam so then they can see your face and they can see your facial expressions. And so this is a great way to reinforce when you're excited about something that they've done really well. They can see that excitement on your face, because I know some of you said, well, I miss the body language. So this is a great place for you to insert that for your students. Recording feedback is tremendously quicker than grading and posting written content for each student submission. So if you've never tried it, I encourage you just to try it once. The great part is students can keep playing the feedback over and over again. So if you're asking them to resubmit or to do a second draft, they can keep coming back to your verbal commentary as many times as necessary. So that is the screenshot that I have up on the screen for you. The camera icon, you'll notice it has a little slash through it. That's how you can tell whether or not your camera is on or off. Some people don't want to be on camera. That's fine. You could still give somebody verbal encouragement or feedback. Has anybody played with any of this?
Dr. Guzman had a question in chat.
Ah, I missed it. Let's see. Does it provide closed captioning? The video in the gradebook tool does not. However, if you ever were concerned about that, I could work with you also to do Kaltura. That's NIU's video platform that comes automatically with closed captioning, and it could still be a time saver. So if you'd ever like any help with that, you might be concerned about accessibility for students, I am happy to assist. So there's a couple of different ways that you could insert video content. Yes, the world is your classroom. Sometimes I think about online courses and I think about just being in front of a computer, right? But the truth is you have students who are experts in something. They could be working professionals, and so you want them to incorporate their perspectives and their knowledge into your online course. That's what's going to make an online course so rich and diverse. So even though, yes, it's an online course and we think of computers, you can ask them to step away from their computer, and they can do projects away from the computer screen and then come back and report back to you. So what are some things that we can do? Well, I was particularly impressed during the pandemic. There were nursing instructors who were very horrified by all the videos coming out of people who were coming up with their own personal protective equipment. If any of you can think back to the early stages of the pandemic, people had to go grocery shopping, but the things that they were coming up with, to cover their face and their mouth when masks were not readily available, we had people using like plastic Halloween masks, all sorts of things, bags over their head. And so they asked their students to go out, find some images of people who came up with their own personal protective equipment and to evaluate it. How effective was their was their creation. Some were better than others. But I really thought what a unique way to get nursing students out, kind of into the world and to look around and see things, that they could incorporate into their own education. All right, so tailor this one for your own course. What's one creative way that you could facilitate a community building exercise in your online course? If you're teaching asynchronously, try to think of an asynchronous community building exercise. If you're teaching synchronously, what would you do? It's always just a good idea to brainstorm and share some ideas with colleagues. So, what do you like to do? I'll give you a couple of minutes here. Okay, I see these coming in. Anna Mary, I love this. For synchronous course, I like to dedicate class time to small group conversations, prepped and facilitated by me, and then save the lectures for the pre-class videos. I think that's an excellent use of course time. Even when you have synchronous classes, your time together is very short. So you want to make the most of it. And if you could record a lecture, why not? And then you have that class time to do things together. Absolutely. Brandon said in his asynchronous class, I required students to meet in groups and turn in recordings of their discussions. That's amazing. I took a qualitative interviewing course, and I also had to practice interviewing one of my peers, and we also turned in submissions of our practice interviews. So great idea. I met people I've never talked to before. Ooh, I think I missed somebody here. Oh, I missed a few of them. I'm sorry. Google Docs. Yes, I love Google Docs. You can also use Office 365. That's free through NIU. And that's just a great way to create documents where multiple people can edit at the same time. So wonderful. Yes, I love that there's more than one way to do this, but you can then see what everyone's been up to. Yes. If any of you like to use Zoom for your courses, you can ask students to get into breakout groups and to record things in a whiteboard. Each group will have their own separate whiteboard, and they can share the whiteboard with you at the end of the class so that you can see what each group was working on. That's another fun one. What do they look for in their teams, work ethics, approach to projects? Are they procrastinators? Do they meet late or early on the weekends? Great. Yes, all of these are wonderful community building activities. Very proud of you. Okay, I keep hitting that scroll button. Sorry about that. So what are some other things that we can do with our students? Well, we can, of course, use discussion forums. There's also something called class conversations in Blackboard. So anytime you see a gear icon in Blackboard, that's usually an indication that you can change the settings. And so usually right at the very top of anything, it could be an assignment, it could just be like a Blackboard document that you post. But you can enable class conversations. And that's kind of like a water cooler discussion board that you're enabling. Anybody can ask a question or make a comment, and anybody can respond. And you'll know that somebody has posted something for these class conversations because you'll see a little purple like chat bubble next to it. So I think one of the things that I missed originally, when I started teaching online was I didn't get to see students just leaning across the aisle and asking a question like, hey, what page was that on? So this is kind of like another way just to create that informal atmosphere where people can just chat back and forth. It's not a graded activity, um, and you can put it anywhere in your course. And of course, it said we have discussion forums. That's another way to create kind of that water cooler effect. You could use Yellow Dig, which is what you see here. That's the interactive discussion board, or you could just use the discussion boards that you see in Blackboard. Personal preference, your choice out. All right, and this is the actual example of where to find class conversations. So I had created some sort of a document in my Blackboard course, and then in the top right corner of that document, that's where you'll see the little gear icon. So I clicked on that, and this is just a little button. All you have to do is click it on or off, and it says allow class conversations. And students and instructors can have quick exchanges within the document. Everyone can see the conversation. And everybody will know that there's a new comment or a new question because as soon as they look at this document, they'll see that little purple chat bubble. At least I think it's still purple unless Blackboard changed its color scheme. Okay, so this is the big question. How much do I communicate with my students in these discussion boards? I've heard a lot of questions about this. I have heard some faculty say that they have to respond to every single student to let them know that they're engaged and that they're looking at their work. I've heard other faculty say, no, that's not the case. Frankly, I don't think it's tangible for us to sit there and respond to every single discussion board post. Some of you may have large rosters of classes, so this can be very difficult to achieve. I do try to chime in here and there so that they are aware that I'm paying attention. Let them know about something that was really great and you want to call attention to it. Or if students are veering off track, where can I reel them back in? If I have a large group of students, a large roster, I might be prone to putting my students into small groups, and then I might do one reply per group. So that's another great way for me to kind of regulate how often I need to respond to my students. So it's all about that balance. I see we're down to about 10 minutes here, so I hope to get all of this in. One of the other things I like to do is to require virtual office hours. Now, I think a lot of us might say that we are available for virtual office hours by appointment, but I have learned that students really do not show up to those appointments because there's been no icebreaker activity. So one of the first things that I like to do in a course is I like to require students to come meet with me, even if it's just for 5 or 10 minutes towards the very beginning of the course. That way we can just talk and get to know each other. And that way, then later on in the course, if they have questions, they're going to feel more comfortable saying, "Hey, can I ask you a question about this assignment?" And they will be more likely to show up in my office hours. I typically require office hours a few times throughout the semester. So I do it once early on, just so that students are kind of prompted to come see me to to make that connection. And then I like to do it again later in the semester, maybe after they've submitted their first draft of an assignment. And then I can ask them a series of questions. What do you think was your strongest part of this assignment? What are you most concerned about? What are your questions? And I try to put them into a speaking position where they have to tell me about their project. And then based on my feedback, they can go home, and they can incorporate that into their next draft. So I do encourage you to try to require office hour meetings. There are some different ways to do this. If you have synchronous courses, you might maybe like even cancel part of class and allow students to sign up to come meet with you for 5 to 10 minutes when they ordinarily would be available during class. If it's an asynchronous course, you might start developing some different blocks of times for when you're available. Maybe, like a Wednesday morning or a Thursday evening, and give them some different options. I like to use Microsoft Bookings for this. I can pre-select the hours that I'm available and let students choose from those hours. But there are other tools out there available. So again, just personal preference. We had talked about this earlier. I do like to distribute a survey to my students. There are a couple of different times that I will ask for students to submit surveys. I might ask them to submit a survey at the beginning of the semester, talking to me, about what helps them as learners, what holds them back, what are their concerns, those types of things. I also like to give them what I call exit slips, and I'll ask them to provide feedback after a lesson. So, summarize the three main points of this lesson, or what do you want to learn more about? What are you confused about? And there are different ways that you can distribute surveys. Some of you can use it as an attendance tool. It's 2-in-1. You get feedback from the students, and you also get to kind of check off the list that students are paying attention and checking in with you. Other times, you can distribute surveys that are anonymous to students. And that way, they might feel like they can open up to you and really tell you what they think about a particular lesson plan. So play around with some of those settings. Surveys are called in Blackboard forms, I think. That's what they're called. And of course, if you need any help setting those up, let me know. This is a survey that I'm actually going to give you access to. This was created by our Associate Vice Provost, Dr. Jason Rohde, and he shared it with me. It's a Google document. So once you have access to it, you can just make a copy of it. But this is something that he asks all of his students during week 1 of class. And so I just took a screenshot of it. So I'm going to send you the link so that you have, access to his survey. You could use it for inspiration. You could maybe change some of the questions. Maybe you just love it the way it is. And he invites you just to copy it and use it for your own course. But I really do like some of these questions that he asks. How has your favorite professor helped you learn? And then how has your least favorite professor stunted your growth as a student? I think you'll get a lot of good feedback from your students. All right. I know I'm nearing the end, so I'm going to make it. We're going to have the time limit that we need. Remember to just sometimes support your students' learning. And this can honestly come down to just knowing how to refer your students to different departments who can help them. And so my favorite is just to remind students to use Blackboard Assist. Some of you probably already know about this. Sometimes people are surprised to discover it. If you log into Blackboard on the left side of your screen, you'll see this little rocket icon. It says Assist. When you click on this, it gives you links to all these different support departments at NIU. And it always has their most current contact information, which is really nice because then you don't have to spend a lifetime trying to update your syllabus every semester with somebody else's contact information. So what do they have in there? They have tutoring, maybe they have career support, maybe they have counseling, all sorts of different groups. So if you've never gone through Blackboard Assist, maybe just scroll through the list of different departments that you can refer students to, and you'll be better equipped to help them, seek out guidance from other people as well. I made it with 2 minutes. I will stick around, of course, if we have any other questions. We've officially gotten to our Q&A period. And if you want to connect with us, this is also some other ways that you can reach out to myself and other colleagues here at Seidel. All right. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. And please let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to turn off the recording too.